Okay, so first I'm going to ask you about Scarface, and you know Scarface is Tony Montana. What ethnicity is Tony Montana, like the real Tony Montana?
Uh, ooh.
Is Scarface?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so you know who Tony Montana is, right? Or at least of what his character is supposed to be.
I have an idea.
Okay, so do you know what ethnicity or background that Tony Montana, the character, is?
Italian or some? I think so.
Is he Hispanic?
He is Hispanic, but like what specific like culture in?
I'll probably say somewhere in South America. I don't think he's Mexican.
Okay.
Cuba? I feel like Cuba would be more.
Okay. Tony Montana, the actual real drug lord Tony Montana, he is Cuban. So you're right. It's okay. It's okay. Al Pacino, the actor who played him, do you know what background he is?
Italian?
You're actually correct. He is Italian. Okay, but do you know who plays him? His name is Al Pacino. What is he? Do y'all know?
Is Al Pacino Italian?
I was right. Al Pacino. Last name. Let's Cuban. I'm gonna go to.
Okay, well, actually, he is Italian, so y'all are 1-1. So do you think that that's a problem that they got an Italian actor to play a Cuban? Like, do you feel like that's a misrepresentation or underrepresentation?
I'm not sure, but I'd say that, I mean, if they're supposed to be representing a certain ethnicity, that ethnicity should play the role.
I feel like they probably could have. I mean, it would have been better that way, but Al Pacino's not a bad actor.
Same. I mean, I've seen that happen with a few actors, but I mean, they definitely could have found a Cuban that would have more accurately portrayed him.
Okay, so my next one is Narcos, the new series about Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar, do y'all know about him a little bit? Yeah. Okay, do you know where he's from or what his ethnicity is?
He's Mexican.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
From Colombia, I think.
Yes. So do you know the actor who played him? His name is Wagner Moura. Do you know his ethnicity?
No, I don't.
He's Mexican.
Okay.
Caucasian. Might be somewhere in there.
Okay, he's actually Brazilian, and he never even spoke Spanish before that role. He had to learn it like after he got that role. And actually the Colombians, there's a backlash. Like Colombians were very upset because his accent wasn't right and stuff like that. Do you agree? Like, would you kind of be offended if that was the case?
Pablo Escobar is big, so right. I would have definitely preferred a Colombian actor.
Right.
I would have been offended. Definitely would have been offended. Like, I mean, it's happened in movies like Concussion when Will Smith was playing an African man and his accent was trash. We're African. His accent was trash.
Yeah, I think so. They should have gotten a Colombian that could speak Spanish to represent like an iconic person from that place.
Okay, and last question, sorry. You know the Dos Equis commercials about the most interesting man in the world?
Yes.
Okay, so the actor or the guy who plays in it, Dos Equis is from what country?
I don't know.
It's Mexican. It's Mexico. It's Mexican beer. And so, what do you think that the actor is who plays in those commercials, like his descent?
Oh, he's not Mexican.
I would hope they're Mexican.
I feel like one of them was white.
Okay. You're actually pretty correct, I guess. One of them the old one was Jewish. He's from Brooklyn, New York. So yeah. And then the new one, he's actually French. Like he's from France. So do you feel like that's also another misrepresentation of Hispanics and Latinos and stuff in media?
Maybe not. I mean, it's just a beer commercial when it comes to that, but if you want to look into like the bigger picture, I guess you could say that.
Do you think that like Hispanics or specific cultures of Hispanics could be offended by things like that?
Well, I'm Hispanic. I'm not offended by that beer commercial.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Definitely. Is it a Jewish guy to play? I don't know.
Yeah. Especially with like misrepresentation, that just leads to more stereotypes, and that in itself is upsetting, and dealing with that is very annoying.
Yes, I totally agree. Well, thank you guys for your time. Thank you.
I'm Claudia Tristan. I work as a bilingual reporter for the Fox and Telemundo affiliates in Lubbock, Texas. So there was one time when I was out in the field covering a story with the Lubbock County Democratic Party and the Tejano Democrats. Well, since I work as a bilingual reporter, I have to work to get sound in English and sound in Spanish. Well, one time I was doing a Facebook Live video at this press conference that the Tejano Democrats were hosting, and the majority of the press conference was in English because there was other media there. And then, since they recognized me, they know that I also work for Telemundo, the person who was giving the press conference immediately switched to Spanish and started answering some of the similar questions I had asked earlier. Well, since it was a Facebook Live video, we started getting comments on our Facebook page saying that we should have subtitles, that this is Fox, that it needs to be in English. Mind you, the people who were making these comments obviously weren't present for most of the press conference live video. The majority of it was in English. 3/4 of the video was in English. Luckily, my director knows that I work for both, and I mean, he understands that I had to ask the questions in Spanish at that moment too. And so he jumped up there on the thread and typed out a message saying, explaining that I work as a bilingual reporter and that this is completely normal and this is, part of my job. I have to do both. The Mexican stereotype that I see the most of is related to alcohol, tequila specifically. I remember living overseas, and when people would find out that I was Mexican, they would just, throw up their arms and be like, "Hey, tequila, let's party," and everything. And they have that idea that that's what Mexico is only about, thanks to Hollywood movies, thanks to TV shows that come from the US and are transmitted across the world. They assume that, Mexicans, yeah, we like to have a good time, but we're not just tequila. There's a lot that Mexico has to offer that goes beyond alcohol. I think one of the main stereotypes that I have to put up with is that I'm an immigrant. I'm a US citizen. The fact that I have to be asked whether I was born here is annoying. I was born in the US. Yes, my mom and dad are immigrants, but they came here legally and they worked their way through this country. My father has served in the military for 30 years. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Army, retired, and he's also served as a diplomat. And my mother has raised all of us under my dad's thumb, working for the government while we moved around all over the country. So one of the most annoying things is when people ask me if I'm a US citizen. I am. I think one of the harshest stereotypes that people have against Mexicans specifically, or Hispanics, I guess, in general too, is that we're all drug traffickers, or that we're all somehow related to the drug movement that has cost the lives of so many in Mexico and many people here in the US. And I think people who assume that we all have some sort of role to play in it forget that the role that most of us play in this drug trafficking world is that most of us end up being victims. One way or another, we have a friend or a relative who at some point or another was kidnapped for money or what have you, but the cartels and what they've been doing across Mexico doesn't represent us and doesn't represent who we are. I have a friend who had to move here to Lubbock, Texas after she was kidnapped in Mexico City, and she hasn't been able to return back and live with her family anymore. She's had to move here. She's made a life for herself here, but she has this fear of going back. And I think people assume that we all, love this drug war that's happening in Mexico. We don't. We don't love it. The money isn't worth it. The lives lost isn't worth it. The fear that many people have to go through isn't worth it. And unfortunately, that's something that we continue seeing in movies. It's an interesting topic to cover, don't get me wrong, but I think the way that it's covered is sort of glorified in a sense to where people forget that there's real victims there.